challenged?
Why? Anyone?
I challenge Davy Jones. Pull the crates! Get all the gunpowder onto the net in the cargo hold! Whatever you do, don't miss. I keep the promises I make, Jack.
Alas, my children, this is the day you shall always remember as the day that you almost...
Hello, and
You always bring me the best films.
hope everyone's doing well today.
I've never been. I don't know that I've ever been that slim or had that much hair.
Antoine is saying you actually look quite handsome there.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Antoine. You strike quite a pose yourself.
So I want to say hello and good day to Woodrow, who was first in the chat this morning. Comics du Nord, Mr. Chill Roberts. I got a little something in the mail from Chill that I'll be showing here in a minute. Very happy with that. Arisaga, Brian, good to see you. Thanks for joining.
Hi.
Yeah, they're commenting on the massive, I believe it was a world record-setting pumpkin pie in the thumbnail for today's show. Chill says that's an EVS-sized pie. Yeah, I'm not sure that even EVS could eat that pie with his bare hands. Elizabeth, D-Geek Art, good morning. Antoine Dennison, good to see you, my friend. And he makes a scurrilous accusation. It says, I'm going to do one of those face swaps with him using Amistad. Did you ever see that film, Russ?
No, I haven't.
Oh, well.
But I kind of know.
Let's just say the Amistad was a slave ship in colonial America.
Yeah.
Amanda B., good morning, good day, good afternoon. Thanks for joining, everybody. Today, yeah, there he goes. There's a famous line from the movie where Jaimin Hunsu, who's playing this slave in the U.S., and he says, "Give us free."
Very good. Very good accent.
Oh, well, you know. So I'm a backer of Chill Roberts' Guardians of Erloth, Volume 3. And I enjoyed the first two books. It's like, it was the first fantasy story that I ever saw and backed in CG, certainly, indie comics in general. I never got into the old like ElfQuest comics or anything like that back in the day. I was too poor. Couldn't buy comics back then. And then in recent years, I was really hadn't really gotten back into comics that much. Certainly not regularly when Game of Thrones got big. And I know that there was, I can't remember who did. I'm sure someone in the chat will know. Someone did Game of Thrones comics. I don't know if they were based on the books Song of Ice and Fire or based on the TV show, but at any rate, point I'm getting to is being a fan of fantasy stories going all the way back to my early childhood, big fan of Conan, and the Dragonlance series of books from TSR back in the 80s. I've really enjoyed the Guardians of Erloth series, so if you like fantasy comics, check them out on Indiegogo. I'll spell it here in the chat if you want to look it up. There you go, Guardians of Erloth. So anyway, when I backed Volume 3, there's the opportunity to get a hockey jersey, or as our Canadian friends sometimes say, a hockey sweater. And I'm going to show this on the big screen here.
Yeah, so what sort of back account does that have?
The campaign?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's bring it up. I'm sorry I'm running late today, chat. My kids are home from school this week. They're on vacation, and it's completely thrown my routine into a tailspin. So I am kind of holding on by my fingernails at this point, trying to get anything done this week. Let's see. Indiegogo. Guardians of Erloth.
We've been delayed from all the pirating. All the pirating.
Yeah.
171 backers. Thank you, Antoine.
Thank you, Antoine.
See, I look at things like hockey jerseys and I think, God, that's a massive thing to be. I would have thought only like a big campaign with like thousands of people in it would be able to afford to do those kind of things. But
it caught me by surprise, I'll tell you that. Oh, here we go. Finally found the campaign. Let's break that out and share it. Sorry for the wait. Thanks for bearing with me. So 127 backers.
Is that Renzo Rodriguez? Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought I recognized his style. Yeah.
Yeah, in the ash can, the art is by Renzo, and then the main book, the artist is Ryan Best.
He's got a lovely style.
Yeah.
I've known Renzo for, well, I've kind of bumped into Renzo on and off for quite some time, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Because obviously he ended up working for, who are the people that do all the sexy fairy tales?
I don't know.
It's a comic book company. I can't remember who they are. They do like it's just sexy fairy tales. It's like they did the Red Riding Hood and all that other kind of stuff. I've got their books up there. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, he worked for them. Zenoscope, that's it. Well done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Zenoscope. He did some work for them. Some very good work for them.
Gotcha.
Worked at the same time. I was at Marcosia. He was at Marcosia as well.
Uh-huh.
Worked with an author, Adam Chill, who doesn't do any writing anymore, I don't think. And he was doing some work with him, and I ended up working with Adam. So we've kind of been in each other's orbit for a while. He's an excellent artist, really, really good.
Cool. Yeah. So there was this. Let me get the campaign page back up. So there was this tier here. If you wanted to, you could get a hockey jersey.
$5. Good Lord.
And Chill is one of those creators that I have been in touch with for quite a while. I might have been the first subscriber to his YouTube channel. I was definitely the first moderator.
Recognize the name now, Comics Denord.
Yeah, so
yeah.
I really liked what he's about. I like how he does business. I like the inspirations for the story. So I backed the book, enjoyed it, backed the second one, and then now backed the third one. So I'm just going to play the trailer here. If anybody wants to check out the campaign after the show, I encourage you to do so. And then I'll show you what this bad boy looks like, this hockey jersey I got.
Got no sound.
Sorry about that. Let's try this again. Okay. Oh, I like that the StreamYard now has it defaulting to sharing tab audio.
So it should.
Yeah. Did you hear it that time?
Yeah. It's going.
Okay.
Yeah. So how many pages is it? How many pages is
This it's broken into two parts. This one is 30 pages,
Right. Okay.
and then I don't know if Chill ever publicized a page count for the second part.
Right.
Maybe in the chat he can put that in there. Oh, thanks, Amanda B, for putting the link to the campaign. Yeah, this is one of those campaigns where in my opinion, the art, the story, the way it's put together, the professionalism of the creator, it's all worth, in my opinion, if it had a lot more publicity, it would be making a lot more money. It's like all the components are there, except getting in front of really wide audiences. So I wanted to showcase that Chill. So in the kind of the greater theme of today's show, which is, how do we continue to grow the indie comics pie? How do readers continue to make known the content that they want creators to make, to continue to bring in more and more creators to provide whatever content is not already there. We already have, I think, done a pretty good job, although there's always room for improvement, certainly, and some creators do this better than others, but providing forums, whether it's Twitter or YouTube or other platforms where readers can provide feedback directly to the creators to say, this is what we like, this is what we don't like, this is what we want more of, this is what we don't want anymore, all of that sort of stuff. So how do we continue with that? And then how do we also, from the opposite side, as creators, how do we continue to reach out to potential customers who either are reading comics, but not indie comics? And then how do we reach out to those people who have never read comics, or maybe they used to read mainstream comics years ago and then stopped, and how do we get our work in front of them so they can at least be aware that it's there, maybe even buy it? And so one of the things that I have talked about specifically with other creators for a while now is ways to leverage common interests that are separate from indie comics, and through those common interests with others, introduce them to what we're doing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to go solo for a minute and show this jersey that I got from Mr. Roberts. So the front is like...
Oh, look. I like that.
The front is like what you guys saw on the campaign page. And then you get the option to customize your number. So I've got number 1 on there because there is only one Thunder.
Well, literally, who'd want to be a number 2?
Exactly. Nobody wants to do number 2 from, Thunder Buns if they can help it.
That's brilliant.
So, yeah, and this is one of those things where I think Chell has done a good job of essentially finding a niche and then trying to leverage it. How successful this will be, I have no idea. How many hockey fans read comics? No idea. How many comics fans watch hockey? No idea. But I want to give whatever visibility I can to people, whether it's creators or readers or them working together, who are trying to innovate in an area that requires innovation if it's going to keep growing.
Yeah, I
Right.
would suggest there's probably more hockey fans who read comics than, say, ballet fans.
I certainly hope so.
I may well be overstating there. I may be grouping people unfairly. It's just a gut reaction. But yeah, you're right. If we can move, indie comics in general, it doesn't matter where it comes from. If you can move out, and so, but it's sometimes you do get some resistance. So it depends where you go looking. I think if you kind of try and get hold of people via groups, things like science fiction lovers in general, I think that's reasonably receptive. But for instance, I've involved in a few groups where it's people that like, for instance, Bronze Age work. Okay. And as soon as I don't go around putting my book out and saying, look at my stuff, but occasionally I might prod, and you'd be surprised at the knockback you get. You're saying, well, I'm trying to do more of the stuff that you like, okay, that you say that you like, and here it is. It's like, oh no, don't bring that to this group. And it's a bit purist. So in all fairness, probably what we want to be doing is looking outside, is looking for, adjacent groups, should we say, like sci-fi fans, film fans, the Dungeons and Dragons, card games, or all that kind of stuff. People that are interested effectively in, for all intents and purposes, literary worlds, somewhere where they can go and enjoy a story, enjoy an environment, and an interactive story. Now, obviously, playing cards or something like that is more interactive and is actually not so much the story. But from what I can tell, from my son plays cards and stuff, and he's not interested in the stories and stuff. He just likes the game. But a lot of the people he plays with are very interested in the backstories. So that kind of interaction is where you want to be. You want to be going where people are hungry for more stories.
Yeah, I agree completely. And it's one of those things where I think it was Jasper who said it. Okay, yeah. He said, every time I criticize CG for not putting more effort into outreach, I feel like no one recognizes it as a big enough issue to put effort towards. I can definitely understand why you would get that impression, Jasper. It's one of those things where there are so many shows on YouTube at this point that it's really easy to get a sense that whatever, let's say somebody watches 3 shows or 5 shows, it's real easy to get a sense after time that that is representative of everybody, and in some ways it is. In some ways it is a microcosm of the whole, in terms of common interest and that sort of a thing. But what it doesn't do is show kind of the effort that people like Chael, for example, are putting into trying to be innovative. So what I mean by that is we, just the way the human brain is programmed, we have a tendency to look for patterns all the time. And the brain basically does this as a way to take enormous amounts of information and run a shortcut to what it thinks is most essential. And so what we tend to do with pattern recognition is, for example, live streams. Let's say you watch 3 to 5 shows a week. And if you do that over a few weeks, then the brain will automatically just start to assume that this is the relevant information and don't need to go any further than that. And so there, okay, so here's a good example. So Jasper says, all I see is CG promoting to CG on YouTube. Go ahead.
I think some of that is down to drama as well. I mean, it's always going to be a harder journey to produce a channel and get eyes on that channel when you're not drama. When you're not, look at this piece of news, it's terrible, or look at this piece of news, the comic industry is this, or comic, we're both just here to promote comics and talk about comic art and writing and all the rest of it, how that's associated with pop culture and with the general with society in general, the human condition. These are all things that go into storytelling, and that's what we're here for. And it's not drama. It's a bit. I think we have fun here, okay, but it's not that drama channel. My channel isn't. My channel is literally. I'm just about art. I'm just about this is my comic book art. Come look at it. And I'm surprised I've got as many subscribers as I've got. But it's never. It's always easier when it's drama, because people start talking about it. And so you can be in a little bit of a wash of channels. You can kind of get lost in the number of channels out there, because there are lots of channels out there, lots of indie channels, whoever the side of the whatever fence they might jump on or off. There are lots and lots of channels there, and it is a sea. There are a lot of people putting their hands up, and it's very difficult to see the ones that are worth taking notice of. But I think it comes down to longevity. If you're in it for the long term, if you love comics, if that's your medium, if that's the thing you're going to do, then once the drama's gone, you're still going to be here. Yeah. And the only way to really sort of ensure, I mean, apart from obviously very good novel ideas and outreach, those are the most important things to get out to other people, to get more people reading comics. The other aspect of it is being here. This is being here for the long term, and not being here just for the drama. You're here because of the comics. You're here because of the medium. You're here because you love the stories, and it's and that aspect, that stability, means that eventually you will draw people to you, and that's pretty much how most channels end up getting big, because of their stability and the fact that they're continuing to produce content. Obviously, you're always going to get a percentage of them that, because they shout loud and because there's lots of drama, they get big really quick. And we all know of those channels. And that's not to say that there isn't any decent content on those channels. Of course there is. Every channel has got good, ups and downs as far as the quality of their content is concerned. But they do shout very loud. And those aren't necessarily the channels that are going to speak to people outside of comics, or the people that you're trying to reach to create new audiences. And so there comes this sort of internal loop, which is of no use whatsoever. So,
I agree. And I'm going to read Antoine's comment here and then kind of circle back to what you just said. He said he'd like to challenge the assertion that, quote, CG wants to grow, unquote. Antoine says, I often find that suggestions for outreach get shot down because those avenues don't reinforce the interests of the base. I mean, some people are interested in it growing. Some people are not. I agree with that. It's one of those things where I personally am interested in seeing it growing perpetually. I never want to see it stop growing, right? There are other people who agree with that. There are also people who are quite content with it being what it is now and view it, I would say, this is just my impression, kind of being on the outside looking in at things they say and do, like they would be happy with treating it as a club. And, if the club never grows beyond a certain number of membership, then they'd be satisfied with that. So, certainly, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach, whether you're talking CG specifically or indie comics in general. I think there are a few shared sentiments, maybe, at most. And then beyond that, I think you get a lot of different opinions about different topics. But to kind of tie that back to what you were saying, Russ, is that I think for those who do want to see indie comics grow, and quite frankly, the mainstream part of the industry, which is the bulk of the industry, no doubt, even though they've been, flailing about desperately trying to stave off complete implosion, similar to what we saw in the mid to late 90s, the gimmicks that they're going for, desperately grasping at short-term money at the expense of long-term gains. I mean, it's, to me, it just comes off as very desperate. There are now, what, 4 quote unquote major events at Marvel scheduled for 2022. Well, if you have 4 of them in one calendar year, how major can any of them be? And when you try to market them, the last several years we've seen, things will never be the same, and blah 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 blah. They're at the point now where they're spoiling the ending to an event with some other thing that's going on, because they've got no editorial consistency. And
the reason events worked before, like 15, 20 years ago, the reason events worked was because there was an event, and then you had a run of comics that just ran with the effects of what the event had occurred.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you carried on with the world.
Yep.
And like there were, you had battles, whatever, and there might have been big ones and small ones, and there were certain storylines, but it sat in the events of that event structure.
Yeah.
It sat with the consequences of that event. Well, if every time you have an event, it's so close to the next one that there are no consequences to sit within, then the events, it's like when we're all special, no one's special. It's that same thing. If there's so many events, then where are the runs in between the events where you can settle into a rhythm of storytelling and start to really, you see, events don't build characters. It's the episodic content between the events that build the characters. That means that when you love those characters or you're engaged with those characters, then you're with them when they go into the event.
Yeah.
And if something mad happens in the event, one of them dies, or they get whisked off to another universe, or whatever it might be, you're along with the ride because you've been with them for the episodic content up until that event. But if there is no episodic content in between, or very little, then you disengage from the characters because they're constantly changing, or they're constantly having some new aspect thrown at them or onto their character. So you need to have you need to have that calm. And unfortunately, I think, like I was saying last week, it's not as straightforward as just, all the writers are writing this way, or all the artists are doing this. Or it's not like that. There's execs involved. There's business decisions. Personally, I would say they're bad business decisions. Okay, it's the same. It's bean counters in charge of Hollywood. Okay, for me, that's what's going on, right? And so, in the same way that this is just a really squeezed up version of Watchmen. Okay, Watchmen came out in the 90s. It was a massive success because it was something different. It was different, and it was wonderful. And if you'd grown up with comics, all ages comics and stuff, and you were a bit edgy and you wanted something different, it was great. But that doesn't mean that all comics should be made that way, because otherwise it just doesn't work anymore. And it's the same now. I think a lot of bean counter decisions are being thrown at comic books, and they're not working. Just because it worked once or twice or even 3 times doesn't mean it works on the 10th occasion.
And Antoine has hit upon where I was going with what I said, and then now you have just said about how mainstream publishers are trying to make money. They're trying to stay in the game. They're trying not to let the whole thing blow up. Antoine said, aren't the gimmicks and events a good thing in the sense they drive away readers, giving indies a better chance to sway consumers? Yes, that is why I brought it up, is because the idea that things are melting down over there, in my opinion, if all we do is point and laugh or point and cry because we just love it so much and we want it to go back to the way it was or whatever, if that's all we do, then I think it's wasted opportunity.
Yeah, show them how to do it.
Exactly, because there's nothing that we individually can do. I mean, Comicsgate in 2016, 2017 was a bunch of us mainstream comic readers who loved the characters and the legacies, and were saying, hey, publishers, we're no longer buying your stuff because of X, Y, and Z. We want to buy your stuff. So if you could please go back to what you were doing when we were buying your comics, we'll buy them again. We have disposable income. And in those years, people were basically told to go pound sand, and much more profane terms, Dan Slott and many others. So yeah, I definitely see it as an opportunity, and I just want to highlight Chael's comment. So he said, my hockey jerseys weren't to attract hockey fans, just comic fans who like hockey and cool apparel.
Yeah.
So there's an example of somebody who, essentially, here's the cool thing about innovation is that the most important thing is not what specific thing gets produced or what specific idea comes out of it. It's the fact that people are innovating, because you never know what's going to come out of that creative environment. It could be anything. Most of the time, things don't work. Sometimes things work great. Sometimes it's just like, for example, this hockey jersey, I appreciate that it came out, even if I'm the only one that ever buys one, or even if he sells 1 million of them. From my perspective as a reader and a creator, I don't care what the sales numbers on the jerseys are.
No.
I care that somebody is doing new stuff. I care that there's more creative energy that is being put towards the benefit of customers. So, I wanted to, highlight this in a sense as a campaign that did not have a whole lot of publicity, still funded. The book is still getting made. The creator is still fulfilling their campaigns, even though they don't have, enormous budgets to do so. And I'm hoping that anybody who sees this, that is either a reader that wants to see campaigns with lower sales totals do better, or if they're a creator out there who thought their campaign, quote unquote, should have made more. I want to encourage them and the readers who want these stories to continue. I want to encourage them, keep working at it. The stuff takes time. I mean, if we're going to provide a long-term alternative to the former mainstream, as readers and creators partnered up to create a new industry that's independent of all of those old corporate influences, then we have to be in it for the long haul. It's not something that can happen in a year. It's not something that can happen in 3 years. It's not something that can happen in 5 years. It's one of those things where, as long as readers who are saying we're interested in independently produced content, then independent creators need to keep producing it. And as long as they both treat each other respectfully, and as long as the creators are listening to what the customers are saying, and as long as the creators understand, okay, they're saying they want this. If I provide that in the way that they want it, I'm probably going to do all right.
Yeah.
But if they also say, I want to do my quote unquote vanity project or my dream project or whatever it is, regardless of what customers are saying, then I hope they also understand that's just rolling the dice.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to do that, then go for it, man, and put 100% into it, and I'll be cheering for you. But at the same time, if it doesn't land with an audience, that's not the audience's fault.
No.
It's one of those things where they want certain things. They didn't see those things in that particular project, so they didn't buy it.
Yeah, move on, make something new. That's the whole point of being a creator.
Yeah.
I think some things have shifted. I don't think mainstream or corporate comics knows it yet. But where the success of corporate comics in the past has bolstered the independent movement.
Yeah.
I actually think that's swapping over. I think independent books will bolster the corporate environment. I don't know if that's a permanent change. I think it will happen, and it may well sway back the other way, because if they can learn lessons from this part of the industry, the independent part of the industry, then they'll start making, more successes and more gains again. The important thing is, never interrupt your opponent when they're making a mistake.
Yep.
Just, if they do what they're going to do, some things are okay. A lot of it is not necessarily what you want to see anymore. Fine. Just make the books, but make your own books. Get out there and do it. For the longest time, Marvel, from a submission perspective, has said, don't submit anything to us. We'll find you. And what I'd like to see is corporate comics finding their way again. And by just seeing what the independents are providing to people. And I'm not talking about Image either, because I consider that now to be as corporate as any of the others. I'm talking about proper independent creators are doing it on their own, showing they can, just like what Denord has done there, making something different, having these ideas, being able to push boundaries and try and outreach into other places to get other people to read comics and buy comics. And it doesn't, things change. As older comic buyers, we have to understand that things change.
Yeah.
Okay, they do. Doesn't give you an excuse to destroy things. But things do change, and as such, you have to be prepared to accept that. But there's no point in crying about it. Get on and do something about it. And that's exactly what creators do. They get on and do stuff. That's why people have different jobs and different lives and what have you, because some people are more inclined to tell a story or create a piece of art or write a book or be an athlete or whatever than they are to say, no, do you know what? I'm quite happy to go and work in a bank and go to Spain for 2 weeks a year and leave it at that and go and watch an MCU movie. Everybody's different. Everybody's different, and that's what makes creators what they are, by standing out and keeping at it and doing it. And exactly what you're saying, it's about longevity. If you want your thing to work, you've got to give it a chance. But if you're not finding an audience, and at some point you have to say, I'm going to knock this on the head and I'm going to go do something different. But that's why great creators are great creators, because they can pivot and they can just keep telling those stories.
Antoine said, I think readers may be saying they're interested in fresh ideas, not necessarily independent content. He thinks it's important to remember the consumer has no stake in our narratives. I would say, Antoine, they have no stake in our narratives until they do. The only reason that happens is if we can get our work in front of them and interest them in buying the work. And then if they enjoy it, then they have a stake in it. So like what we were talking about earlier and what Russ was just saying is that, from a reader's perspective, I would say if you back a couple of books and they're not up to what you think the standard should be for what you paid for them, I would encourage you to look for campaigns where it looks like that will meet your standard, whatever that is, or a set of standards, whatever that is. In the last, I don't know, 3.5 years, something like that, I've backed over 150 some books, and some of them have been duds. Just flat out. I was disappointed with the writing, I was disappointed with the art, and I was disappointed with things that the creator did. So unfortunately that's going to happen. But you know what? When I was in a comic shop and I was reading Marvel and DC every week, some of them were duds.
Yeah, you're always going to get a few. Yeah.
So I think where sometimes the pain feels a little more painful is that when it's happening now, if I've spent $25 for a book, and then I've spent however much for shipping, $10, 15, 18, whatever it is, and I've waited however long to get it, and then it's a dud, partly because it's happening now, that's more painful, and then partly because I spent X amount of money to get it to me, and then I waited all that time, and it's a dud. Whereas when I was in the comic shop, I could just walk in, pay couple bucks maybe, and then if it was a dud, at least I had these other books that I liked because I would buy in multiples, right? And then at the same time, it was the kind of thing where because it was serialized, it was like, all right, well, this month it was a dud, but last month was good, and next month will probably be good. So I think we, as independent creators, have to work that much harder to not only earn trust, but then maintain it. Because the investment that we're asking of a reader for an individual book, even if it's, between, I don't know, 48 to 100 pages, it's still $25 is a lot more of an ask, plus shipping, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So
Antoine is right again. He's talking about it's harder to have a dud when you're an indie, and the next book will take a year to come out. That is the problem. And for me, that's the biggest thing, having to wait so long for the next book. It is an issue. There's no doubt about it. Although it's not so much waiting for the book, it's when it's delayed. And I know delays happen. It could happen to me. I'm not suggesting that I'm perfect or that, the delays don't happen. They do. But I've backed several campaigns where it's been over by a long time. Yeah. And you think, why is it this long? An illness, things happen, but why is it now a year late? What set of business decisions have occurred for that to be the case? And the thing is it puts me off buying again. That individual aspect puts me off more than anything else. It puts me off more than the price. It puts me off more than the shipping cost. Because if I think I'm going to get a project and it's good, I'll pay the money for it. And I have done in the past. Yeah. And if it turns up on time, you think, okay, it's a bit of a pain. I might have to wait 6 months for the next installment if it is, episodic. But that's okay because I know it's going to turn up on time. All right. Yeah. But if it takes a year over what you've been told, you're like, yeah, it was a good book. Even if it's a great book. Yeah, it's a good book, but I don't want to wait. Yeah. So I've got to, not only have I got to wait for the next one to be done, but I don't know if I've then got to wait another year on top of that. And that lets you down. It lets all indies down because what you're doing is you're creating an environment where people going, yeah, but I can go to the comic shop or I can go to Amazon or, and I've got it like that. It's hard enough to convince people to wait for, 5 months and say, right, if you back me on day one of my campaign, okay, in 5 months' time, I will send you the book. Pay, I would gladly pay you next Tuesday for a burger I can eat today. It's like it's not going to happen. All right.
But, not interested, Wimpy.
Yeah, not interested, Wimpy. But people do it because they love comics, they love comic books, and sometimes because they're invested in the creator. They like what the creator has to say. That they like the whole thing, the whole package, which is what we're all trying to do. But if you then make someone wait a further 6 months, a year on top of it, even if you're being completely open with what's going on, it can give you the jitters as a buyer, as a comic buyer. If you don't understand why it's taken that long, you're not going to buy another one. And so for me, timing is most important. If you say something's going to turn up and it doesn't turn up, but you're honest and it's open and it's a percentage difference, fine. But if it's like a year, if it's 6 months, a year over what you've already stated, it's going to take and that's where we all fall down, where we can all fall down, and it's of vital importance. I'm not suggesting that everybody has to have their book done before they go to crowdfunding, because that's what crowdfunding is for. I speak to several creators like, I wouldn't really put a book out unless unless it was like 90% done, and I absolutely respect that opinion. It's a great, I really do. It's like, it's very businesslike. They know what they're about, But at the same time, it is a crowdfunding environment. So people don't expect to get their thing immediately. Okay,
Right.
they expect they're going to have a little wait. But if you make them wait too much and it's not transparent, or it's just so long that people become annoyed by it, you're not going to sell a second book or a third book.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to, are you able to earn trust? And if so, to what degree? And then if you can earn it, can you maintain it? Because you have to, in a way, you have to keep earning it again with each campaign. Adam Miller says he's been backing crowdfunding books since around 2014, and the delayed books have always been a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And Amanda B says she was looking this morning, her first 10 books that she backed, she's only received 4 of them. And then Woodrow says, yep, this is why I've waited so long to launch. I want a product before I promise people one. I'm in the same boat with Woodrow. I was in a situation where, and believe me, please do not take these as complaints. I'm simply laying out the facts as they happen. I'm not looking for sympathy here. I'm in a situation where I initially intended to launch the Outliers in 2019. So I started in 2018 trying to meet people, trying to establish some sort of name, etc. Well, in 2019, a few months out before I thought I would try to launch, or probably go into pre-launch really, a close family member got diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. So we had this family health crisis that had to be dealt with immediately. So I dropped all publishing plans, just put them on hold, and I was prepared to drop them completely depending on how this thing turned out. So 2020, around February or so, health crisis averted, follow-up treatment is needed for a long time, maybe for life, but the immediate danger's over. I'm like, okay, I finally feel like I can, pick up plans again, pick up where I left off. And then the COVID lockdowns hit, and I became a homeschool teacher literally overnight. And, okay, got to put those plans back on the shelf again. So it's one of those things where I had been talking about the Outlier since 2018, but I had to keep pushing out a potential launch. And to me, and I've seen other creators do this as well, where, like Woodrow, for example, where they would rather, if they're in a position to do so, they'd rather try to get the thing done or really close to done before they actually launch. And I personally, I'm taking that approach myself. Most, if not everybody in the chat, I'm sure knows that I came down with COVID in the summer, in July. And it was a near fatal case of COVID and double pneumonia. And it took time to get over it. And it's taken even longer to kind of work back into a full-time workload the way I had before I got sick. And so I had a decision to make. I could either try to stick with my October, November launch that I had planned earlier in the year, but I felt like with so many variables that were very large that were still looming, I felt like the more responsible thing to do was to push out the launch again into March, April. Now, I'm happy to say that I've been able to rebound from a lot of the setbacks that resulted. As a matter of fact, we're going to show some color tests on Outliers figures, because I've got a new colorist that I've been testing, and so far everything's going really well. And I still intend to launch in March, April. But what I'm trying to get to is that I think at the end of the day, every creator, and I as a reader would hope that creators would do this for me as a backer. I hope that whether they get more of the project done ahead of time or not, I hope what they're thinking ultimately comes down to is, what is the most responsible way to do this?
Yeah. I think there's a world of difference between, garnering an audience, talking to people, being transparent, showing yourself as a creator and saying, I plan to do this, that getting pushed back so that you have a later date to do it. There's a whole world of difference between that and taking money off someone
Yes.
and then being a year late. That's the point
Agreed.
of difference. When you take the cash, okay, and I've actually, there are a couple of books that I've backed, and like, I don't think I'm ever going to get them. And that's
same here.
Okay, I understand the risks.
Yeah.
Okay, but that is not acceptable. You've taken the money, make the book. It's as simple as that. Okay, You've taken the cash, make the book. If you don't, it's fraud. It's pretty simple in my view. Okay, it's you're taking something, you're giving nothing back. So that point, that specific aspect of it, is where the mind swaps over. Prior to that, with what you're doing, people are like that. In fact, if anything, it increases your kudos. People can see that you haven't taken money, that you have delayed because of certain aspects, and that you've decided that you're nowhere near taking money off people,
right?
Until you're ready, whether that be ready to production and you haven't got it all done on 90% or whatever it might be. Exactly as you're saying, with responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm an indie creator. I'm also a freelance artist. Do gigs for all kinds of different people. Okay. I have work on currently. Okay. That is taking time up away from my book. Okay. My book will ship in March. Okay. And the way that I'm going to get around that is by going out and employing other people to get the bits done that I can't get done. You get the job done. Okay. And there's that attitude, that business attitude, I'm afraid, is sorely lacking from a lot of creative types. Sorry, I said it, but it's true.
And I highly recommend that any creators who are looking to get into the game, I highly recommend trying to link up with other people who can help with approaching things from a business perspective, because there are people around who have that business experience, and they're more than willing to share knowledge, experience, whatever it is you might need. All you have to do is ask. So, this comment here from Statistical Zero says, that's the professionalism that keeps me backing Only Death Can Save Us. I wanted to say that with you, Russ, doing freelance work, in addition to your crowdfunded work, I'm doing the same thing. When I saw in 2020 that the COVID lockdowns had happened, and I didn't know when I'd be able to actually publish my own work, I just ramped up my freelance work. And I thought, okay, well, if I have to postpone this my own publishing activities again, then how can I capitalize on this opportunity? How can I not let this be a failure, but actually make it a victory? I'll ramp up my freelance work, and that way I'll get more, my name in more credits, in more books. And people will get to see that I'm dependable and that other people are willing to pay me money to work for them. And then that hopefully will help to establish a level of credibility for when I do launch my project.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just so happens I'm in a position now where I've been turning down work for a long time because, word got around. People decided they wanted to hire me. And I'm now basically locked in long term with as much freelance work as I'm willing to take on to still be able to publish my own stuff. I'm at a point, I got to a point fairly quickly where I could be a full-time freelancer if I wanted to. I feel extraordinarily privileged to be in such a position. But, I still want to publish my own stuff. So
that's the trick, is there is a balance. The last 3 or 4 months have actually, if this was 1972, okay, all right, I just plucked that number out. If this was 1972, with what I've got on my plate right now, I would have a studio and I'd have understudies.
Yep.
That's where I am right at the moment, but I don't know, because it's not 1972. I don't know how long this will last.
Yeah.
So you have to take, it's feast or famine. You have to take the feast while it's there, not knowing when the famine is going to come. And in some way, you juggle it. You make sure that you get people in if you need the help, and you get the work done. It would be great if I had an understudy. It sounds very, when I say I'm talking that about myself, it sounds extremely arrogant, but it's true. You need someone that's coming up that's kind of, that you want to do things in the way that you want them done. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in the
Because
US,
obviously it's all you know.
in the US they call them assistants.
Yeah.
So, but it's the same thing. I mean, that's how the industry was built.
That's how it was built, and I'd love to do that, but
Yeah.
I can't afford to commit to someone in that way, unfortunately. So what I'm having to do is I'm having to distribute my work in a way where I pick out different people and get them to do specific things. On my own book, so what I'm going to do is I've literally just finished the first 22 pages, or the first 30 pages, sorry. Just finishing that up now, and I'm finishing up on the colours. So I've already got a letterer, and I got flatters to do the flatting, and then I went in and did the colour aspects. Well, I'm actually in a situation now where I'm thinking, no, I'm going to have to get someone else to do the whole colours for me. So, but what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to match my colour work. They can't just come in and do whatever they want.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to talk to a colorist to say, right, okay, this is what you're going to have to match, the style. You must match this. And if you can't match it, then I can't employ you. All right. So you have to kind of make those decisions and put those lines in the sand to make everything work. It's one of those situations where if more work comes in and you think, how am I going to deal with this? It's a nice problem to have. I'd rather have more work and kind of hand it out to other people and make sure things are happening than have no work at all. It really, that's the way freelancing is. It always has been, always will be.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. And speaking of coloring and getting it colored the way you want, let's show off some new color work for the Outliers. Bring up the window here. There it is.
Woohoo.
So this is, I'm not naming the colorist yet, only because I want to make sure that if we stick with this colorist, that they're on for the full project. And so for now, they'll remain anonymous, but I'm hoping that within a week or two, things will be at a point where they're signed on and we can announce who it is and talk to them on the show, because I'm very happy with their work. Basically, what we've got, if Oli from 656 is still in the chat, I'm sure he'll recognize this as what they call a cut and grad style, which is a style of coloring. And the reason why I like this so much for this story in particular is because I recruited Russ based on work that I had seen him do, not only in superhero stuff, but also I was a backer on Only Death Can Save Us long before I ever reached out to Russ. And I really liked the way that he was capturing an era, Bronze Age comics. He was capturing a feeling that I used to get when I would read Bronze Age comics. And that's what I needed for an illustrator for this series, because The Outliers is all about, it's like if you combined 1980s Marvel and DC superhero storytelling, but you set it in the modern day, what would it look like? And you had original characters and original stories, but the world that takes place in is as wide open as those two universes combined. So that's how the Outliers came to be. And when Russ signed on, I knew I'd have to find a colorist that would be willing to really work with this, not only the vibe that we're trying to achieve, but then also work with Russ's line work with that in mind. And so I'm really happy at how this turned out. I'm curious what you guys think. I'm just going to move this a little bit, and then I'll take a look at your guys' comments. Let's see what people are saying. Jasper asks, is InkSpot still attached? No, a couple of weeks ago, I announced on this show that InkSpots had to leave the project. Without going into a whole lot of personal details, essentially, he went through some rough times the same time I had COVID and was recovering from COVID. And when we got back together to resume the work that he had started before, it became pretty clear that it wasn't going to work out anymore. Not the least of which was because of the revised production schedule and him not thinking that he would really be able to meet the deadlines for a variety of reasons. But there was absolutely no animosity involved. InkSpots and I like each other a lot, quite frankly. And I had, without giving away the spoilery nature of this, I had him on the hook for doing some artwork in addition to coloring the interiors and the cover. So I have asked him if he would still do this other artwork, and he said, yeah, he's definitely still interested. So the plan is still to have that produced by InkSpots, but I'm not going to go into what it is until we're actually in the campaign, and then I'll reveal it. Okay. Antoine says, looks more airbrushed than cut and grad. Oliver says, the first version had a more cut and grad feel to it, but I agree, it looks more airbrushed, still looks good though. Yeah, so what this is essentially is kind of a hybrid style where I've asked the colorist, who is excellent. This person is a pro colorist and has done a lot of mainstream work and a lot of indie work and is very good at what they do. And so what I asked for specifically for this project was something that was kind of a blend between techniques. I wanted something that had a kind of an open feel to it that really lets the line work breathe. I explained that there's not going to be a whole lot of special effects work that's required. As a matter of fact, I think in some ways, too much of that will take away from what we're trying to do. We want to do some effects like the glow on the Saint. Whenever his power is active, that glow is there. It creates this energy field around him. And essentially, his power is active anytime he's conscious. So when he's conscious in the book, you'll see that glow. Well, that glow can only be achieved with a special effect. Otherwise, it just looks very flat, which in the graphic novel version is not going to work. Now, in the single issue format, it will work because the colors will be flats and we'll do that glow the same way they did in the Bronze Age, which was essentially take the yellow and just, draw around it. So in the single issues where everything's flat colors, that'll work. But in the graphic novel version, that's not going to fly. So we do special effects, for example, there. Eric the Guapo, is that Captain Britain? No, not quite. Good guess though.
I've never heard of Britain, so.
Jasper says, when is the campaign launching? Target is March, April, and as we get closer to those months, I'll get more specific with that. But that is the time frame.
Latest stat.
Yeah, so Antoine asked, do I have a logo for this guy, a character bio? Yeah, so this is the Saint, real name David Santos. He does have a character bio, and I have a style guide that I'm producing, which is inspired by two things. One is the DC Comics style guide that Jose Garcia Lopez did for DC in 1982. And then also
not too high a benchmark for me to run at.
Right, exactly. And then the other main influence is the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, the original series that came out in the 80s, and then the supplemental that came out called Update 89. So my goal is to combine elements of those two sources. And so you'll see characters like this. You'll see the turnarounds. You'll see character bios. You'll see descriptions of their powers and all of that stuff. Statistical zero. Okay, have a great day, Stato. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you. So yeah, that's about it. Russ, was there anything that you wanted to mention as regards to our previous conversation before we wrap it all up?
No. I think we touched on a lot of good stuff. It's positive stuff as well, which is what I'm all about. What we're all about: being positive, getting out there and doing it. It is a long journey, but if you love it, if that's the thing you want to do, then you've just got to stick with it.
And I think always being open. Yeah, I think always being open to using new platforms where it makes sense and trying to reach out to new groups of people where it makes sense. I would encourage anybody to do that. Reader, creator. Despite those who might think that whatever indie comics is to them right now, that's the way it should stay, I will echo Russ's sentiment that things will always change.
Yeah.
So that being understood, and we can all just look at history to tell us that, yeah, that's true. That being understood, I would just encourage people to say, okay, well, if it is going to change, well, then how can we help change it the way we want it to change? If we want it to be like this, but more, like this, but better, then people have to do the work to make that happen.
Yeah. I think you got to create the stuff you love, buy the stuff you like, and talk about it.
Yeah.
That's to just talk about it, to just show it to people and say, look, there you go. I like this. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, there's some other stuff that I like. Have a look at that. Evangelize about the things that you love. It has a viral
absolutely.
aspect to it.
And occasionally I'll hear or see, read, whatever, a creator or maybe a couple creators talking about how, something along the lines of what's fueling all of this is creating the work. And I would say what's fueling all of this is readers wanting the work to be created and telling people what they like and telling people what they don't like. And that gives creators something to go on, some sort of reason to create the stuff to begin with. So I would say
you only ever see this kind of thing happening where there's a vacuum. And if you need to fill the vacuum, nature abhors a vacuum. Yeah. And that's what we're doing. There's certain aspects of corporate comics that just aren't hitting the spot. People want something new. It's time.
And the stuff in the indies that is not hitting the spot, to me, I just see it as opportunities. And so as long as readers are saying, here's what we want, here's what we'll pay, that's all the motivation I need.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, I certainly wouldn't be going through all of the work to do what I'm doing. I'd work freelance. I'd enjoy it. And that would be the end of it. But as long as people are saying that they like the stuff that is being produced, then there's going to be people who want to produce more of it. So with that said, as long as there are people turning up in the chat to listen to this show, watch this show,
we'll be here. Yeah,
we'll be here. We appreciate every one of you guys.
If I can just, I'll just a quick peek. I've got something in share there.
So, nice.
We're talking about colors. These are very primary, basic colors. There's no grads.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of effect, but that's it. As you can see in the backgrounds, but nothing more than that. It's shade, light and shade, and lots of bright color. I'll just, here we go. That one. There's another one there. So you can see there's quite a bit done now.
Yeah, you were drawing this on your show.
Yes, right. Yeah. So there's like I say, this is the first third of the book done now. So it's all the lettering's done for it and everything. So I'm just compiling that and then I'll be on to the second, third next week.
Nice.
Along with everything else I've got to do.
Great.
The first 30 days are up on Saturday, I think. In between you and me and, just a couple of people that happen to be in the chat. I think I'll probably extend for another 30 days.
Secrets told. I like it.
So there you go.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the outros. Make a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Take care.
To the hip hop, the hip to the hip hip hop, you don't stop the rocket to the bang bang boogie. Say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie.
Just do it. Make your dreams come true. Do it. Nothing is impossible to do it. Make your dreams come true. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Just do it.
Don't let authority stop you from doing what you love. You